So I'm going to take just a moment here to introduce our leadership. Dr. Holly Handley is the president of this chapter. I am the president-elect, and Lynn McBain is our operations, VP of operations. And that means she gets to do a lot of the work, pulling all this together. We also have a steering committee that we put together to help with the launch. I'm not going to introduce all of them individually right now, but they did a great job pulling this together, setting up the programming and marketing and all of that. So thank you to everybody associated with the chapter. And now I want to turn it over to Mike Van Dyke. Mike is a member of our steering committee. He's also sitting there right behind Dr. Keller, kind of looking over his shoulder. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike because he is going to introduce Dr. Keller.
Well, I'm happy to call him a friend, and I joked before I have the same hairstyle as you guys can see. That's how much I admire him, and he does a great job. And I'm going to sort of slip away because I don't think he really needs that much of an introduction. You know what the ARCS model is. I have an old book here I wanted to show you, though. This is the one that I had him sign in 2015 when he last spoke over there, and there's pictures of Nancy and everybody when he was over there for ATD. So it's a great reminiscing of how wonderful it is, and there's new stuff for him to share. So I'm going to slide away while you guys listen to him.
There we go.
And it looks great.
Yeah. So it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to be sharing this knowledge and these ideas with all of you. And I really appreciate the work Mike has done to pull all this together. So I'll jump right in. So as what you all know is the ARCS model, or with the addition of the concept of volition, it's the ARCS V model. And there's several topics that I'll try to cover tonight. This first one is the characteristics of competency-based educational goals and the role of motivation. But competency-based education, as opposed to just memorizing and learning. So that's important. And then identifying the motivational characteristics and implementing a motivational design process. And that's the second topic. And then the third one will be applying this model to instructors, designers, and learners. And now those are the three topics that we'll cover at least a part of tonight. Now the first topic we'll get into are the characteristics of competency-based educational goals and the role of motivation. Frequently stated educational goals, and we've all heard these, we've probably even communicated them ourselves to our classes, but the frequently stated goal is to develop independent thinkers and disciplined inquiry in scientific areas and high levels of competency in professional practices, and also to create creative problem solvers. But we frequently state those goals, but we don't very often observe them. Frequently observed educational practices include requiring memorization, teaching for understanding, and teaching skills at a procedural level. So that's the more typical kind of educational setting. Now, types of educational goals, they include knowledge transmission systems, where it's primarily just the focuses on the memorization, development of understanding, and contrast the development of skills. But then in preference to that is the skill and competency building system. Both goals are important. You can't have skill and competency building without knowledge to support it. So both goals are very important. And then closing the ideals versus practices gap. Our goal is to build systematically from knowledge to competencies, and to formal classroom instruction often focuses on knowledge development by means of direct instruction and provides a foundation for skill development. And this is a picture from a workshop in Japan, and it shows people, we're working in a, where'd it go? There we go. Working in a laboratory. And they're very, so much of education in Japan very focused on practical application. And anyway, so it was easy to get a picture to support this.
Well, John, they might not know that you did a lot of work in Japan too.
Yeah, I have.
You guys probably don't know that, is it? John spent, I'd say, about maybe a quarter of his professional career outside of academics doing private corporate work in Japan. Flew over there many times in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he is.
Yeah, that was an enriching experience. So the goal of ideals versus practice is to systematically build from knowledge to competencies, and to formal classroom instruction often focuses on knowledge development by means of direct instruction and provides a foundation for skill development, whereas laboratory instruction tends to focus on skill development and provides a foundation for competency development. But true competency development requires all of these: knowledge plus skills plus transfer and problem solving experiences. You know, a lot of times people argue for one set of goals versus another, but they're all important. Now, motivational implications. Let me get down here. Okay, the knowledge-based systems tend to have many motivational problems with curiosity and relevance. You know, they knowledge-based systems tend to focus on memorization and recall, practical applications, whereas a competency-based system requires personal motivation to become a member of your profession, not just get a job. And that's where I know in my doctoral program, we focused on competency development. I'll say more about that in a little bit. And that also requires a personal obligation for learning, you know, self-directed learners. How can you have I guess you have mostly all learners are at a distance, right?
Yep, their program is a distance learning program.
Yes, okay. So the personal obligation of learning takes advantage of continually growing affordances for learning, resources that facilitate and support learning. So that's you know, we can't just focus on practical application or memorization. And here are some affordances that I'm referring to: resource opportunities. It includes things like productivity software, databases, expert systems, help systems, Twitter, cell phones, LinkedIn, Skype. All of these things are part of the complete set of resources that support online learning. Now, but having all these opportunities, you know, we can provide them, but that doesn't equal desire. Just because you have the opportunities doesn't mean you're going to use them or that people are going to appreciate them. There are many motivational challenges. And we can ask ourselves, why are learners not always motivated to learn? Well, we can think of a lot of reasons, I suppose. Why are instructors reluctant to change? This one we often overlook. Why are instructors reluctant to change? You know, people get set in their ways. I can remember even way back when I was teaching secondary school, you know, I set up some innovative approaches with my department head, but most of the teachers in the English department didn't want anything to do with it. They just stuck with their very traditional teaching approaches instead of using hands-on practical application. All right, now there are a lot of obstacles to implementing a hands-on approach. One is the students may not have any interest, and they're overworked, so they don't have time for it. They have distractions, and that's of course especially true here in Florida with all of the theme parks and the what do you call it, the
Beach.
beach, yeah, and the going up in the sky.
Parasailing.
Huh?
Parasailing.
Oh well, and being bored, having a fear of failure, that's a big one. You know, if you're really fear of failure keeps people inhibited from trying out new things. And schedules, low on energy, that's a big one. And just a lack of time, a sheer lack of time. All of these represent rather common motivational obstacles. The question is, given all these challenges, how can you systematically support and sustain learner motivation? Is it even possible? Well, of course, I'm going to say yes, because that's my area of specialization.
You better say yes.
Yeah, I better say yes. All right. Now, the second topic we'll cover tonight is identifying motivational characteristics and implementing a motivational design process. You know, when I was started to teach, it was all about instructional design. Nobody talked about motivational design. They just weren't interested or didn't think it was possible. They thought it was too subjective, the whole idea of motivation. And they didn't see motivation as something that can be systematically planned for and influenced. So the classical view is what existed. When I started out on this, just the carrot or the stick, you know, the carrot, approach-oriented, reward positive behaviors, and the opposite, the carrot, which is punish undesirable behaviors. And that was about it in terms of understanding of motivation. But we incorporated contemporary views that motivation is an energy that guides behavior towards reaching a particular goal. And my own definition, that which explains the direction, magnitude, and persistence of behavior. Direction meaning, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? Magnitude, how strongly do you want to accomplish them and support them? And finally, persistence is sticking with it until you reach your goal. Now, motivational problems in e-learning, something that concerns all of us, materials and implementation. Problems include boredom, and confusion, and even chaos, lost in hyperspace, serendipity effect. A colleague of mine in Germany, Marcus Diamond, introduced me to some of these ideas. And in addition to that is the problem of social support. You know, with the problem in a lot of e-learning contexts of isolation, students just working alone at a distance, and they lack a social network and collaboration, which are helpful in learning, and motivation support not available when and where it is needed. When I taught online, I had I introduced the idea of students all getting acquainted with each other. At the beginning of a class, I would have some activities where students had to learn the names of other students. And then some people had taken 3 or 4 online courses already, and they'd never had that experience before. Because I would see at the beginning of the class, they'd say, oh, hi, Charles, I saw you in a such and such a class 2 years ago. But they hadn't shared any ideas of any knowledge of acquaintance with each other. But at the beginning of the class, I would have them all do an exercise where they had to find out some characteristics of at least 3 other learners in the class and share them back and forth. And anyway, it was a collaboration activity that they appreciated. Now, when it comes to moving from that into actual motivation has many complex and interacting components, you know, and they, as you can expect, I'm going to introduce the ARCS model. And this comes from categorizing, looking at the different dimensions of motivation. Instead of treating motivation as just a single concept, you know, looking at what are its component parts. And I was the first one to do that in terms of identifying attention. You know, getting people's attention is like the first step in motivating them. You know, if they're not paying attention, they're not going to go anywhere. So we have the opposite sides of curiosity on the one hand and boredom on the other hand. And then as soon as you get their attention, say, okay, you got my attention, but now that I see what you're going to teach me, what am I going to learn about this? What is it? Why is this important? So you have to build the relevance, establish goals, values, and achievement to keep them interested. And then finally they say, all right, you got my attention. I think this is important, but I don't think I can do this. So the third part of motivation is confidence, having people believe that they can be successful, having a sense of self-efficacy and positive attributions for success. And then once you do that, those are the three primary components of motivating people. And then the fourth one is the sustaining it, satisfaction, making sure that people, that you follow through with the first three, that they get a sense of reinforcement, a sense of equity, that they're all being treated fairly. And then that gets people motivated and they're ready to proceed. And then the fourth one is volition. People, they not only have to, you not only have to establish their motivational components, but then they have to have positive intentions and believe that they can succeed. So volition is the action-oriented part of motivation. All right. Now, another way of looking at it in terms of our conceptual foundation is attention combining these three areas of curiosity, arousal, and boredom. All are important characteristics, and each has an area of research on its own. On relevance, there are a lot of components, from goals and values, or to build something that's going to be relevant. You have to have goals and values that are important for the learners. And then the next three are kind of a package that was introduced by McClellan. A strong need for achievement, need for affiliation, which is positive relationships among the learners, and then finally is the need for power. And surprisingly, achievement does not always require power. Power is wanting to be in charge, wanting to be in control, whereas a person high in need for achievement may not have strong need for power at all. They just want to do it their own way and do it their own thing. But all three are important components of relevance. Together with competence, and White was the guy that did research on that, and flow, the idea that you're engaged in what you're doing and you don't even notice the time going by because what you're learning is so important to you personally. Then relevance, after you do that, the next step is to build confidence, have learners that are interested in developing a strong locus of control. And who's in charge here, me or you? And people like to have their own sense of control. And then goal orientation and attribution theory. To what do I attribute my success or failure? To myself or to some external factors in the environment? And then self-efficacy. People will be much stronger motivated if they believe that they have a strong sense of commitment and achievement. And then finally, it's the opposite, learned helplessness. This is where people, they don't see any connection between what they're doing and the outcomes. So they just feel it doesn't matter what I do, I'm not going to succeed. So that would be the learned helplessness part. And then finally is satisfaction. And all of these factors.
Got that. Okay.
Oh, you got it already. Contribute to a sense of satisfaction with the learning activity, a sense of equity, that you're being treated fairly, and cognitive evaluation. What do you attribute your success or failure to? And then intrinsic, extrinsic, and reinforcement theory. All of these are important components of motivation under the satisfaction category. So all of this breakdown covers a lot of the subcategories of motivational factors that comprise the ARCS model. And then we go from these concepts to actual strategies, and how do you, how do you build upon them to stimulate and sustain motivation with the learners? You have to do something to capture their interest, to stimulate inquiry, and then maintain their attention. It's one thing to capture their interest. You can do that at the beginning of a class or an online experience without too much difficulty. But it's a little bit more challenging to actually stimulate a sense of inquiry rather than just, well, here are the 20 things you have to memorize in this course. That's not a way of stimulating inquiry. And then after the instruction gets started, things you do to maintain attention over time. You know, if it starts to, you know, it'll be one thing for people to be interested at the beginning of a course, but then they get tired, and you have to include things in the course that re-stimulates their attention from time to time. And then as far as building relevance, you know, relate the content to the learner's goals. This is a very common one, you know, that we always, you know, tell people, you know, you gotta take it and attach it to people, things that are important to them, as well as matching interests and tying to experiences. You know, if people need to be able to relate what they're learning to their past experiences, it deepens the learning experience. And then next is confidence, you know, building a strong set of success expectancies, making people believe that yes, they can be successful in the course. I can't tell you how many times, as probably all of us have been entered a course and wait a minute. And the instructor tries to motivate us by saying, oh, this is a very challenging course. You know, only 80% of you will pass it. Have you ever had that experience? I certainly have. So you want to be able to build a positive set of success experiences and then expectations. And then you have to follow that up with success opportunities. You know, a lot of times you go through a course and what do? You have a midterm and a final. That doesn't give you very many opportunities to see that you're learning and know that you're succeeding. So you need to have activities and so forth during the course to reinforce the success expectancies. And then finally, you have to make sure that the learners believe that it's because of their own activities and responsibilities that they're succeeding. You know, if they feel that it's because what you're doing, anyway, it's not going to work. And finally, success, intrinsic satisfaction, making sure that the learners are experiencing the learning experience in a way that makes them feel good about themselves. And another part of this is rewarding outcomes. You know, the old traditional behavioral modification techniques are useful. They can help in building rewarding outcomes. And then it's important to have fair treatment, that people know that you're not unfairly taking advantage of them. And then finally, volition, having strong intentions. You know, that is, when you finish the course, before you start the application processes, you know, having people build a set of, sorry, I keep clicking on that at the wrong time. Thank you. The strong intentions, you know, that makes a difference in how persistent people will be. And the action control and self-regulation are all elements of volition that are important. All right, so then there we go from concepts to strategies. Next, then, how do you build effective strategies? Well, here we've got all these ARs, Cs, and S's, and Vs and everything together. And how do you build strategies out of that? Well, combine instructional design with motivational design. We have instructional design, the art and science of making learning experiences as effective and efficient as possible. And then motivational design, art and science of making learning experiences as engaging and intrinsically appealing as possible. It is by the marriage of the two that we get strongly motivated learning experiences. All right. Now, the motivational design process, it's that I created, it's a 10-step process. Most of these are true of any design activity that you're engaged in, regardless of whatever it is. You have to obtain background information about that which you're trying to influence. In this case, course information and audience information. And then with that input, you build, you do an analysis to build a profile of what is the instructor or the students, where are they strong, where are they weak, so you know which to focus on. with your, as a result of your analysis. Analyze other course elements and list potential tactics. Once you know what you want to achieve and what the other course elements are and how you put all that together, you list a set of strategies. Now, instructional design does not have this step because there's more of a logical progression from objectives to tactics. As motivational design, you can know what your objectives are, but there can be multiple ways of accomplishing them. So you list a set of potential tactics, and then you select and design the ones that are going to be most appropriate in that setting. And then you integrate the motivational design with the instructional design, select and develop materials, evaluate and revise. So you put all that together and you have a motivated and successful course. All right. Now, audience analysis is a very important part of motivational design. So we start out with the idea that motivation, that the course may not stimulate a high level of motivation, that people are going to be bored, have daydreams, be indifferent or useless, consider the instruction to be useless, or a feeling of helplessness and no control, cynical and resentful. So, and then ineffective planning and weak commitment. So all of these represent aspects of audience that can contribute to a low motivation. On the opposite extreme, we have too high, motivation too high. What do we mean by too high? Well, that students, if they're over-motivated, they're likely to be hyperactive, agitated, have trouble paying attention, and even feeling fearful or unsheparded. That is, they're fearful that they're not going to succeed, that they're going to be failures. And so, and then the next step then would at least are the opposite extreme, which the students are feeling smug. Oh, I already know this, and I don't think you can really teach this to me. So those are demotivational aspects. And then finally, satisfaction potential. They have unrealistic expectations, and they end up being disappointed. So finally, the result of that can be feelings of obsessiveness and over controllingness. All right, so all of those are the high and lows, but in the center we have appropriate levels of motivation, which leads to energized, focused, and persistent readiness among the learners. All right, and applying the model with instructors, designers, and learners. Instructors' motivational challenges. Instructors' motivation is just as important as the learners, maybe more so. Great instructors exhibit high enthusiasm, but enthusiasm isn't enough. However, it is important. Often, instructors in a course are kind of deadpan, or they're not enthusiastic. They're just procedural. They teach what they're supposed to teach. But enthusiasm is very important to have instructors with motivated students. A motivational planning checklist, I've created that. It's available in my writings. You can review it, and it'll guide you through a process of listing various activities to meet the motivational challenges. And then somehow those can be organized into a set of frameworks for motivation. First is to create a felt gap. Often instructors just start right in. In fact, the traditional instructional design models say to start the instruction by explaining the objectives. And then from there you go into strategies and so forth. But even before you present the objectives, you need to have a felt gap in the learners. And learners feeling like, well, there's something I need to know here and I don't know. And what am I going to do to learn it? So having a felt gap and then present the objectives to show that how you're going to close the gap. Another one is flipping the classroom. That was a popular expression for a strategy that I used for many years, which is that instead of having students just show up at the classroom and you start teaching, have them do preliminary work ahead of time. have them give them assignments, an assignment to do, a preparatory assignment, to do before they even get to the classroom. Then when they get to the classroom, you can teach the things they need to know to be able to do the assignment and improve on it. I'm sorry, I keep clicking this thing. Another thing is to produce problem and project-based learning environments. That is, students are almost always more motivated to learn when they have a hands-on obligation and set of activities to learn in front of them. And I used to do that all the time. Give the instructors, give the students, instead of just teaching them and having them recall what they learned, but give them actual problems to work on or projects to work on. And then they have to learn the required information ahead of time to be able to engage in those problem and project-based learning environments. And the last one is transcend the boundaries of the formal learning environment. A former colleague of mine at Syracuse University used to have she would highlight key points, and she would use Twitter, for example, and have the learners, even during class, she would encourage them to use Twitter to communicate with people outside the class and make them interested in the class and form a connection. And that would expand the boundaries and make it more interesting for them to have outside people also engaged in the learning experience. All right. Now, summary, getting to the end here. And educational goals include both the learning of basic concepts and skills and the acquisition of complex cognitive problem-solving skills. So all of the above are important. Integrating the ISPI model with the ISD process can lead to instructionally rich and motivating learning events. And you can find detailed explanations of concepts, motivational design procedures, templates, and a worked example in my book. Right? So I'm not here to sell the book, but it's out of print. I mean, but it's available if you want it. All right.
Yes, I was telling John earlier, the last time I had to buy a copy of this book for a client, it was $140 because they're hard to get nowadays.
Yeah,
But you can
I
look
don't
around.
get any of that.
No, these are secondhand copies. Yeah. But if you guys have questions, I know John is happy to answer questions.
Yes, please. You can ask questions verbally or you can put them in the text.
So this isn't really a question, but Lynn and I were talking throughout this whole thing about how much this is so aligned with everything that we're doing with performance improvement and how, it's not just about instruction, it's kind of getting anyone involved. And I would just say that watching a lot of this helped a lot of pieces fall together in the relationship between instructional design, performance improvement, change management, all of that. So I just thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. My own background in educational psychology and learning design, I did a lot of consulting work with companies like IBM and AT&T and so forth. And so I really learned early on how to make things practical and pull together from concepts and theory to transferring them into practice. And so I'm glad you noticed that.
Dr. Keller, it's such an honor to be here tonight with you guys. I took your class in 1996 at Florida State, and so I'm happy to see you again. Your class was one of my favorites, of course. So question is, what is different about motivation from 1996 to 2023?
Oh, good question. The main difference is in the addition of the volition category and just the adding more detail to the representation of the other categories. But the basic model is still the same. ARCS that captures the characteristics of human motivation very well. And then, like I said, the the addition of volition has been the main change.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you again for teaching me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Hello, John. This is Jim Klein. Just want to say hi. Thanks for being here.
Where are you?
I'm.
Oh, here we are.
There we are. Hey, how are you?
Lots of things on the screen. So
Yeah.
So John was my major professor, and I was his first doctoral student. He graduated from Florida State, so that's how far we go back. My question, John, is about the IMMS. I've got some students who want to use the IMMS or pieces of the IMMS. Is that available somewhere that you can point me to, or just maybe I contact you?
Yeah, first of all, for the benefit of the rest of the group, the IMMS is a measurement scale, instructional materials. I forget. Anyway, it's a measurement scale you can use.
Instructional materials, motivational scale. I also studied under John. I had to interrupt. I'm sorry. But
yeah,
that's-
there it is, John.
Yes, it is. Gary Berner, nice to see you. Yeah, there are two scales. The IMMS applies mainly to students' motivation to learn from materials. And then there's the CIS, Course Interest Survey, to find their motivational reactions to a course of instruction. And they're in my book. You can use them freely available, or I can provide it to you if you'll just write to me.
Okay, thanks. I can't afford $125, John.
Yeah, I understand. I wouldn't.
No, I actually have the book, so thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I just want to say it is truly such an honor, and there are several of our students that are on and just John, just so you know, they're directly messaging me. They're too shy to speak up, but they're going, "This is so cool. This is really awesome to hear from, to hear from you and to have you here with us online." So, I'm not going to, call any names or anything, but I'm having so many direct messages, and they're just we're very, very honored and just so thankful. And it's so exciting just like Mike put in the chat that every time we learn so much, we read this, but there's something about just hearing you deliver, your research and just the years. It's really, and it's so neat to see your students and all of these other names that I'm very familiar with too. So just again, thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate that. And it's been a real pleasure for me to be here interacting with all of you today. And this is probably the last presentation like this I'm going to do, at my age and retirement and all that. So it's been a real pleasure to be here. And as I said, interacting with all of you.
Well, John, I'm going to pipe up, because the first thing I asked you in day one of class was, how do you make them want to? And you looked at me and said, that's what we're going to find out. And I'm going to say that I'm now teaching in that program that I was a student from you in, and it's still a journey, and it's still a journey that's led by your research. And I'm very grateful for both your tutelage, your contributions, and it's just, yeah. That's a really guiding. How do you make them wanna? So.
Yeah, how do you make them want to? Did you get an answer to that?
No.
No. You create a
We're-
gap between what they know now and what they need to know.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, it's so nice to see you.
Well, we're going to jump off and let you guys continue with the meeting if there's no other questions. Thank you guys very much for being part of it. It was a pleasure to be here with you guys. Because he did all the stuff for you. I don't know if you guys know how much time he put into those slides, but those were all him. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank
They're
you, Dr.
phenomenal.
Keller. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we can click.
Okay, before everybody runs off, we have a few more things we want to share tonight. Again, this is kind of the launch of our chapter. So we're hoping that some of you will stick around and learn a little bit more about who we are and what it is we're trying to accomplish here. We really just want to be a resource for practitioners, students, academics, everybody who has some role in that performance improvement world, which is kind of everybody, because it is so relevant across every sector. And you know that because you're working in it or learning about it. But our goal with the chapter is simply to provide two different things. I'm only going to talk for a minute here, and then some of our other folks are going to speak. But what we want to do is provide events like this, where we bring folks like Dr. Keller in to speak to us, or folks that have some best practices workshops, or whatever those things might be. And then also to learn from one another. So to learn from our guests, also learn from one another. One of the really important things that ISPI does not want me to stress to you is you do not have to be a member of ISPI to be a member of this chapter. We keep our own membership list. ISPI does not require you to be a member of their organization. Obviously, their organization charges dues, and that goes towards supporting the structure and the journals and so forth. We don't do journals. We do Zoom meetings that are free if you have an account. So we do not charge any dues at all. There is no cost associated with being part of this group. The only thing we expect is for people to share their thoughts and their ideas. Any one of you might be a presenter in a future event for us. Maybe you're doing something that is, you know, particularly interesting to the rest of us, and we would love to have you share that. So later, you're going to get some information about how to join the chapter from Dr. Handley, and I encourage you to take advantage of that. And with that, I'm going to stop here, and we're going to let, I think, Isabel talk a little bit about upcoming events and things like that. Hopefully I didn't steal her thunder too much there.
You not really, but you kind of did my work for me. We haven't gotten a whole lot of planning done as much as we wanted for this. So, but what we can tell you is we will be doing two events sort of like this per quarter. It'll be probably a combination of speakers, maybe panel discussions, socials, and different opportunities to connect with each other. And we want some feedback from you guys as far as what you guys would like to experience and who you guys want to hear from and what topics you'd like our sessions to revolve around. So we've included a post-event survey, which includes a question for you to answer, you know, what you're wanting to learn and what you're wanting to get out of this chapter and being part of it. And so we'd love to hear from you on that. And once we have some input from you guys, we will start putting that down on paper and planning and scheduling those events. We do have one event already scheduled, which is going to be our next one in June. It's June 28th at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. So the same time as this one started. And we're not quite sure what it's going to be yet. It's probably going to be a social just to sort of network and get to know each other. But if we can get a speaker in time, we might have that as well. So we'll be in touch with everyone in the chapter regarding what the events will be and the schedule.
And I have put in the chat the direct link to joining the chapter. And like we said, you can be a member of the chapter without being a member of the parent organization. I will say the parent organization, the bronze membership, which gives you access to the resources and everything, is $55 per year. So they've done some reorganization with their levels of membership. They have a bronze, silver, and gold membership levels, and it's very reasonable. And their resources, they have a tremendous library of resources that that is available. So I would encourage you to check that out. We recently went to the convention and it was wonderful. It was tremendous. It was leaders in the field of performance improvement, and focus on other areas other than just the nuts and bolts of performance improvement, but that human element, which we're all about, and looking at empathy and wellness and some of the other topics that are really facing the performance of individuals and organizations. So very excited about the direction of ISPI. We're very excited about this chapter here, just to get us together. And I've had several people to direct message and just going, this is awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity to network and just to get to meet others in the field, whether it's practitioner based or in academia, just to see what's out there, to have a group of individuals to ask questions and to just be able to have truly this, community of practice that we're here together. So we're very excited to, like Isabel said, provide different types of opportunities through these different, and we want it to be worth your time. We're all very busy people, and taking this time to hop on for an hour and a half, we want it to be where after we go, yeah, that was really good. That was really fun. And that was really informative, whatever your needs are, to somehow provide that through this medium. Awesome. Is it Tina?
Yes, it's Tina.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That is so neat that he was your professor. That is so cool. How fun. Just the connections, just tonight. It's like, oh my goodness, this is really, really neat. There's a lot of our students here too. And so we see all of these, and my major professor here is too. So it's just interesting to see the network of people and coming together. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's really interesting how we're all so interconnected. It's such a diverse field, and we all work in very different settings, and yet we're all connected. And you see that when you come to these meetings or you go to a conference, because you get to know people, and we're all connected in some way. I was noticing, in addition to the number of people who their instructors or chairs are here, I'm sure there were several people that Jim Klein, who spoke up and said he was Dr. Keller's first student. There are people here who Jim Klein was their major advisor, their chairs for their committee. And you can see Jeff Phillips over there nodding. He falls into that category. It's just really cool to see that. And then the other thing I wanted to point out, Dr. Keller said, you can use my instrument. Of course, your IRB is going to insist that you have a little note from him that says that. But he has been so generous with that. He really wants to share his work and share that knowledge. We've had several students that have used that with his permission for dissertation research. I noticed Sasha, who's not one of our students, but she commented, thanks for letting me use that. So if you're doing research on motivation, he's really a valuable resource. What I want to, and we're going to wrap up here, we're going to wrap up early for a change. So that's pretty cool. Couple of things I want to say. We mentioned you're going to receive a survey after this please take a few minutes to fill that out. That survey is going to serve multiple purposes for us. First of all, it's going to let us know if you'd like to join our organization, be a member of the chapter. And again, there's no dues, there's no major commitment. All you have to do is be willing to get some emails from us and drop in when you can for events that might be of interest to you. The survey will also provide us some really good information about what you thought about this particular event. And it'll also give us a chance to find out what kind of topics you're interested for the future. So please take some time to do that. I also want to point out before I wrap this up that this was Lynn's dissertation in practice. For those of you who aren't familiar with a dissertation in practice, it's kind of an action research type of event. She did a tremendous performance gap cause analysis on the front end of this. Good chance that a lot of you received emails from her asking you to do surveys while we were deciding what to do with the chapter. And we really were on the fence, you know, is it worth the effort? Is there the demand to do this? And I think tonight showed that there is a demand. And I thank Lynn for leading us to this event and to the future of the chapter. This is a huge hurdle for her. Now all she has to do is go write that little document and then she will be Dr. McBain. So probably by our next meeting, right, Lynn?
If you say so, Dr. Hastings, I'll take your word for it.
Okay. So thank you all for being here. Again, we want you to do the survey. And I'm going to wrap up by asking you what questions you might have about the chapter, about anything. We're here to talk.
I filled in the survey and I'm excited to participate. I don't have any questions.
All right.
I would like to be inspired and inspire. So.
That's awesome.
Okay, I see all of our students are very sarcastic, or at least Audrey wants to know if the document can be a comic book or a Post-it. I think we've answered that question before.